Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dawn of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 28, which is called Closing the Deal. So we return to Zongdu Hansha trying to execute the plan. He wants the unanimity. He's apparently sent Sadao to tell Chaisi to send it over. But of course we remember Sadao has been killed by Chaisi, so what's the deal here? Is this not going ahead or what? You know, that's kind of what we learn here. We get Zongdu Hansha's kind of point of view as he makes his way to meet with Chaisi, and then the actual meeting itself. And it doesn't go so well, so he implements his secret strategy that he has, and it's very, very interesting. So we'll get to that as we go through this here. So he again reiterates the whole thing about Chaisi and the Hawks, that she will communicate with people via Hawks in terms of like she'll send messages to them, but she won't accept messages that are sent to her. So they have to go to see her in person. But immediately it's revealed that the response that Hansha got for send the unanimity to me was straight up no. That's all she said. So straight away, problems here. And he's on his way to go meet with her. And this is where he begins to talk about how bad things are now in Bin-Er. We started off the books with the idea that there was sort of like a riot in a way on the verge of happening until the errand runners, the head kickers came in. This is just built up over time. We've got this over the course of a variety of chapters, the idea of stay away from the center of the international district because there's crowds of people furious at the Shang merchants. And that's what he gets across here. Did he not see the barricades going up? Whole sections of the town blocked off. Traffic had been cut in half. There were rumors the Earth King was getting ready to step in. This is why he needs the unanimity, of course. So he feels that this at this stage is the only solution, which in a way is crazy because everything could have been avoided if they just worked with Yangchen and agreed to put the effort in, be better leaders, improve the Shang cities, and so on. But we get here, it's explained to us here more about the Shang system and how it works, how you become a Zongdu. And it shows, I suppose, why, for the most part, none of them really do care about being a good leader, because it's not about that at all. In many ways, it's not even about the power. It's all about the money for them. So that's what we learn here. So he then quickly goes over this idea of who would have thought that, cutting back on the illicit shipments would be the tipping point for Bin-Er? Because after what Yangchen said of I know you've been letting more ships through than are actually allowed. I'll tell the Earth King about it. Hansha was oh, let's stop that. So at least more recently we haven't been doing that. But you need people and to pay people. People need jobs people have jobs to make those extra bits of cargo go through. And if you're cutting it down nearly in half, that's a lot of people losing their jobs. And on top of already a problem where people aren't being paid properly, they feel like they're being scammed by these people, suddenly, putting so many people out of work just to sort of hide your misdoings is a bit of a problem. And his reaction to this is crazy. The last bit had set everything over the edge. Why? He says he dumped the workers who would have processed these goods. And he's why had that set things over the edge? He just doesn't get it. Zero connection to the people in his city, basically. And this is where you really see that these are not actual world leaders. And the whole Avatar comparison from before is nice in principle, but wrong in every other kind of way, because they don't care about being good leaders or really helping people or at all. All he thinks about is so many other past deals under past Zongdus had ended in similar fashion. Why did the city have to lose its mind over this one? That, we fired people before, got rid of workers before. Why this time is it a riot on the verge of taking over the entire city? And he's just kind of like, why me? And this is where we go into it. The idea that, you know, what for them, what the Shangs, what the title of Zongdu is about. The title of Zongdu offered the holder an opportunity to make astounding amounts of money from kickbacks, budget skimming, and guiding the flow of deals and contracts. That's how it worked. And here's the key point. That was why it cost so much money to bribe the people necessary to get appointed to the role in the first place. The procedure, standardized by the office holders before Honsha, was to go into massive amounts of debt to scrape your bribes together, make even more massive profits during your term as Zongdu, and then pay back the original loans. The difference that could be pocketed was potentially so large you'd need every pair of trousers in the middle ring to hold it. So that's kind of crazy, the reveal, because what they told us before is just that the Zongdus had been selected from sort of trusted noble houses to, you know, lead these cities. But now we find out that, like, okay, that was maybe the case with like the initial appointments, but pretty much since then, it is a paid for position. And everyone who takes the position is basically making this investment of, I'll go into massive debt, pay the money to get that role, do that role for the sole point of making a lot of money because of the unique situations of the Shang cities, controlling more or less all the trade in the entire world in this era. So much money to be made. And this is why it's a get in, get out position, because none of them actually want to be a leader of anything. They just want to make money. That's why all the Shangs are so obsessed in a way with keeping the system the exact same way. It's why they don't want to work with Yangchen. They don't want to put in any effort to try and improve things and try and be a good leader. And that's why none of them seem to have a plan in place to sort of, like, they want to keep the role forever or anything like that. None of them want that, because they just want to get in and get out. And that's the whole thing, like we heard about before with Dushin, the guy before Honsha in charge of Bin He got out, lived a life of luxury, and, you know, just died without anyone knowing he was ever a particularly important player. That's all that is wanted. And it's just noted that, like, that's the process. That's how it's meant to work, like it worked for Dushin. That's what Honsha wants. But apparently now, during Honsha's run, was when the gears had to fall off their pinning. So he just feels it's all going wrong for him. Why did the Avatar have to come after him in his city and cause so much problems? Could she not have just waited a few years until, like, he was out of the role and it was someone else's responsibility? And this is why he's kind of like chosen, in a way, the nuclear option. It even says it here, I think. He didn't love the fundamental idea behind unanimity. Honestly, didn't have the same grand hopes for it as Chaisi. But it was the only tool at his disposal that had a chance of staving off disaster. And it's like, just be better to your people. Like, it's a really, like, just this thing of, like, any sense that they consider themselves to be actually good world leaders is just like, you are willing to get this, like, super secret weapon from one of your fellow Zongdus and use this to basically, in a way, fight against the Earth King and potentially multiple other nations just to hold things in place for a while so you can make enough money to leave. It's a wild plan when this could be solved by just helping the people. And it's so kind of, like, really, like, these guys, it's like, they're villains in the sense that, you know, they're just out for themselves, but they're not, like, villains in the, like, the actual, like, truest sense in so many ways, because they're not the power players that they think they are. Though, as we'll see here, Chaisi might actually be, you know, more of a mastermind Zongdu. But anyway, so yeah, he arrives in Jondori and is brought before Chaisi. And he notes that, oh, you've changed your servant. What happened to the previous guy? And of course we know Chaisi said he was a spy for the Fire Lord. So she has had him killed, basically. And she says, you know, what happened to him? What didn't happen to him. I hired someone else. It was a matter of security. They bring up the whole idea of like Hansha's like, you killed my messenger, and she brings up that, oh, you didn't think about this, did you? What if Sadao was basically playing both sides? What if he was acting like he's loyal to the Shangs and getting money from us, but was actually full on loyal to the Avatar and getting money from her as well? You didn't think about that, did you? It's not the case, because I think you could tell Sadao was 100% in on the whole Shang thing, and he was betraying Yangchen ultimately. But this is just how, in a way, paranoid Chicey is. And you note that is sort of a thing with a lot of the people in power during this era. That's a kind of defining trait of the Earth King. It's a defining trait of what seems to be most of the Shangs, but especially Chicey. They're all just very paranoid about what could happen. In so many ways, because of how suddenly things shifted with Fei Shan making what happened during the Platinum Affair happen. So that's a big, big thing there. So there's that. Chicey does bring up the idea that, there was a boy from Bin an obvious plant attempt, and then the Avatar showed up. So that's mentioning Chiu as well. So the two people who were killed, confirming that, like, okay, yeah, she had that done, so that's fine. And this is where we get to the idea of, like, okay, the reality of the situation. Are you going to give me the unanimity? And she says, my answer is still no. Unanimity came to fruition with my research, and I have borne its costs. We're not deploying it simply because you've bungled the situation in your own city. So that's a big deal. Like, we've known that more or less, that like Chicey helped to do at least the last stage of research on whatever it is, and it's now somewhat ready to go. She says that she's done the research, and the costs mostly came from her, though it was mentioned that Dushin was involved in this as well, I believe. And then this makes him angry, and he's kind of like, do you know what the difference is between you and me? Unlike you, I'm not interested in building a dynasty. So this is the thing. Chicey told Yangchen, and it was clearly a lie to some extent, I also just want to do the typical Zongdu thing of just get in and out. Implying the idea of, like, I just want to finish my job here and then live a happy family life. Look how simply I live. I just want to have my family. But this is sort of, in his mind, someone who I suppose is a little bit closer to her, is kind of like, in a way, your child is super important to you because you view that as being the next in line to what you are building here. She does actually want to build something on this island. He says, I know you've got plans, grand plans for the future, your bloodline etched into history. Admirable, really. But if you don't get to see tomorrow, if I don't get to see tomorrow, neither will you. I know too much about you and your little experiments that you're hoping might keep you in power forever. It wouldn't take too much for me to convince the Fire Lord. He should put Jondari in the hands of a less ambitious functionary. If you don't help me put out the fires in my house, then I'll make sure it spreads to yours. And he does. He like throws a mug basically across the room, like it smashes on the wall. She stands her ground pretty much. She just stays there still and looks at him. So interesting stuff here. Like, how much of this is true? Because she doesn't really confirm or deny what he's saying here. But I think the interpretation of Chicey up to now is definitely that this, I think, fits what's going on with her. That she does actually want to do something that's grander in scope. We don't know exactly what's going on, but it's interesting. So, interestingly, she does say that, like, I relent. You've convinced me that the best place for unanimity is in Bin but I need more time. And you'll notice that what she's doing here is very similar to what she did with Yangchen. She suddenly switched and was just like, okay, yeah, we can work on changing the Shang cities. It's going to take a long time, though. And she's saying here, okay, I'll give you the unanimity, but it'll take a while to organize. And at this point, Hansha realizes that this isn't going to happen. negotiating with her here is not going to get anything to happen. This is effectively the end of the discussion here. And he just walks in and was like, of course, it's an important decision. It shouldn't be rushed. One quick bit that I sort of just skimmed past there a little bit was that in the narration, it just notes that Chicey was the one with the long-term outlook. She wanted to keep her title forever and for all time. She wanted this little island to become her own clan holding, this city the jewel in her crown. In her eyes, she had generations to lose. And that's sort of like, that's his perspective on her, seeing her here in this moment. And so he walks out and realizes, okay, I have to activate my plan. He was going to call in the one person who could get unanimity from Zongdu to Bin quickly, right out from under Chicey's nose. Once the assets left her shores, her reaction wouldn't matter in the least. Chicey might have thought him incapable of long-term planning, but that wasn't the case. For all her smugness about catching spies, she'd missed a very deep plant Hancha had successfully put in her organization, someone who had been in his pocket from the day he first stepped on Zongdu's soil. He just hoped Kalyan still remembered the signal for linking up. It had been a while since they last spoke. So, big reveal here right at the end that Hancha, who over the course of this chapter almost is presented as being this incompetent character who really doesn't have anything going for him except this position that he bought. Otherwise, everything is going wrong, and he doesn't seem to have the skills to get himself out of it. He thinks he can get the advantage over Chicey during the negotiations, but it doesn't work at all. At all. He gets a second refusal, having already been refused by letter. And so he comes out of it and is like, she thinks I'm a whole lot of nothing. But she's missed one very, very key spy, one long-forged plan that I had, and that is that Kalyan is working for me. So that's interesting. That's an interesting twist on things, ultimately, in that, what does that actually mean for Kalyan? It still means he's loyal to a Zongdu. It's just not the one we thought. So it's weird because it still means it puts like Kavik in opposition to ultimately where Kalyan's loyalties seem to lie at this point. But we don't know where Kalyan is at this point in his life yet about like, is he going to completely just be like, oh brother, you're back, like I agree with everything you're doing, or is this his life now? That's sort of the big question. But this is also the reveal about how Hancha actually gets the unanimity, is through Kalyan, who actually has access to it because he's basically Chicey's right-hand man, but he works for Hancha. So this is an important plot point in terms of like finally movement on the plot. The hero characters are trying to find out what it is. The villain is trying to get his hands on it as well. Now it's finally actually going to happen. So that's quite interesting. So of course there's still a few pieces that have to kind of happen here in terms of like, well, if Kalyan is ultimately on the good side, maybe he'll work with Kavik and they won't send the unanimity. So it still all hinges on Kalyan and his characterization at the moment. But anyway, great chapter overall. Like just that information that we never had before about the Zongdu is that like it is a position that you buy, that it's just all about making money, and that Hancha represents your typical Zongdu, wanted to get in and out, doesn't care about the position too much, just wants the money. Chicey though seems like she actually wants to build a legacy for herself, make Zongdu hers, and that, you know, her child will be the next leader of Zongdu, and wants to make it a proper dynasty type thing. Now, that is going to put her in opposition of the Fire Lord at the very least. How is that going to work? So she is the one ultimately in charge of the unanimity. So if it is possible to, you know, fend off the other nations, she could use it herself, but is not using it herself yet, and is, doesn't want Honsha to use it yet either. So what's the deal here? What is her ultimate plan in all of this? Because somewhere along the line, it seems like her challenge is going to be the same as his challenge. But he might have mistimed it because he's reacting to something that's happening now and going for the worst option, using this weapon that he doesn't, I suppose, even fully know what to do with. Whereas she is fine with sort of waiting to see what happens, because, she, for the most part, has her affairs in order. And Zongdu isn't a mess in a way. That, like, she had a similar incident, but it just got dealt with, as we saw. But Bin-Er is about to explode, it seems like. So, in interesting situations, all over the place in this book. And I like the characterization of Honsha. I'm perfectly fine with having this villain who is just intelligent to a certain degree, but ultimately has relatively small motivations, because we do have other characters who are more ambitious. And then we do have the other actual world leaders who obviously better represent what it is to be that way. And then you have Yangchen herself, who's again different than them once more. I like these different sort of levels of kind of figures in the book. And that, yes, Honsha is ultimately the one here driving the plot, and he's not a huge threat. But the one clever move he has made seems to have gotten him the unanimity, and he's going to use it. What is it, and how much, in a way, trouble is he going to get himself into here? Can he resolve the problem in the city with this? Is this the solution that they have said it is up to now? They're all the questions you have going through this chapter in the book. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this important chapter here with the villains, basically, of the book. But other than that, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.